It all starts with one idea. Have you ever wondered how today's top CEOs, business leaders, and people who work for the most innovative companies in the world found success? Join host George Davison as he explores the innovators that are shaping tomorrow's world today.
And today we have Matt Mattioda, and he is the Chief Forester, also the Vice President of Cut-to-Length Systems. And his organization is collaborating with Ponsse, which is an equipment company that makes some of the equipment that they use in the field. So let's open up our conversation today, Matt. Just kind of curious about how your company got started, if you could run us up to speed on what your operation does, and then can you talk a little bit about Ponsse and the founding of that organization?
Sure can. Thanks for the introduction. I appreciate that. So our company is Miller Timber Services. We're based out of Philomath, Oregon, on the West Coast. We're a full-cycle forestry services provider. Full cycle meaning we work with the trees from the time they're planted as little seedlings, all the way through caring for those trees as they grow, protecting those trees from wildfire, and then harvesting the trees when they're ready to be harvested.
Interesting. So how did you get started? Can you tell us a little story about the entrepreneur that started this venture?
Sure. Our company was founded by a gentleman by the name of Lee Miller. Lee is an entrepreneur, and he came up with this idea of he wanted to work in the woods. He grew up in a forested environment and wanted to have his own business. So he went to school at Oregon State University, the College of Forestry, and upon graduation, did the equivalent of starting a business out of a garage. He started it with a chainsaw and a pickup truck.
Good for him.
Yeah. So he started out there doing manual labor in the woods, cutting brush and thinning out small trees, and as slowly the business started to take off, and he hired his first employee, a longtime friend of his, and the business continued to grow, and now we have about 150 full-time employees and about 250 in the middle of active fire season in the middle of summer. So we've since moved on from the pickup truck, and now we have three facilities. We have one in northern Idaho, one in Oregon, and one in California that we just purchased recently.
Wonderful. And while you're doing all that work, you also are working with all sorts of unique equipment, aren't you?
We are. These Ponsse machines are fantastic. They're a great group of folks, and they're very innovative in their designs and the approach of how we manage and harvest and thin forested environments.
So it might be a little hard in this kind of a venue to describe what these machines do for you and your operators. But could you describe it a little bit so that our audience can understand what the Ponsse machine is doing?
Sure. So if we were to step back in time a little bit, maybe 40 years or so, a lot of trees were cut by hand. Be a gentleman with like Lee started with a chainsaw and a pickup truck, and they'd go out to the forest, and they were going to thin trees or harvest trees, and they'd go out and they'd pull out their chainsaw and put on their ear protection and chaps to protect themselves, and they'd go cut down a tree by hand, just the old school way, just not with an axe but with a chainsaw. So step forward to where we're at now, and we use these Ponsse machines, and the Ponsse machines do the same thing. So instead of Lee being out there, let's say, with a chainsaw in his hand, you be in the machine, and you're controlling the machine almost like a video game, and the machine reaches out with its arm, and it has a chainsaw on the bottom of it, essentially, grabs the tree, falls the tree, and then what it does is, just like someone would need to cut the limbs off the tree to make a log to go to the sawmill, the machine actually pulls the tree through this harvesting head, delimbs it, measures the length and diameter as it's pulling the tree through, as it's feeding through the tree, and then it gets to the place that we predetermine with a computer where we want to make logs based on certain values, pauses, the chainsaw bar comes out again, and bucks the tree into logs.
What an innovation. So we're harvesting a tree, and instead of falling a tree and letting it hit the ground and then going by with the chainsaw and cutting every little limb off, then you'd have to pick it up, this sounds something like out of a Dr. Seuss book, where the device picks the tree, holds the tree, cuts the tree, then pulls the tree through a tube and delimbs it, cuts it, and stacks it. Is that a fair way for our audience to think about this?
So yes, that's a great way to look at this, and we can do it faster and, more importantly, safer than we could by doing it by hand. So we're taking a lot of people out of harm's way by putting them inside a protective cab that's designed for safety. So a lot of folks that work in the woods can get hurt very easily with falling trees and walking around in the woods, but you put them inside an enclosed cab, now you're in an environment that's safe for you. So it's not only it's more productive, it's also safer.
That makes a lot of sense. When we first opened up the conversation, you were talking about managing the forest and harvesting from a seedling all the way up and through. There's a lot of responsibility in proper management of the forest, isn't there? There's
a lot. And the decisions we make today may last 20, 30, 50 years. So foresters have to have a long-term view of things because our impacts last for long periods of time, and those decisions last for long periods of time.
So in the world of that you operate in, I imagine there are all sorts of different types of jobs that need to be filled. If you were going back into the days when you were a young buck, what would you recommend, or if looking back on it, mentoring somebody? If somebody wanted to get into your field, how would they do that?
Great question. So if you were to want to get into forestry, there are several really good forestry schools in the United States that can help point you that direction. Inside of those colleges and there are universities, there are different forestry programs related to different aspects of forestry. So a forest engineer, they typically lay out road systems, lay out harvest units, things of that nature. They have a little different role than I'm schooled as a forester. So my role is actually in the growing and tending of the trees and the forestry cycle and what we call silviculture. And there may be other folks that are related in fish and wildlife positions that work with foresters to help make decisions about what we do out there. So there are a variety of career paths that one can take.
That's interesting. I think the audience is probably learning for the first time that there are schools that focus on this.
Yes, the College of Forestry at Oregon State University, which is where I went to school, is ranked second in the world for forestry programs. It's a great school. There's also forest recreations programs there as well, so you can be involved in the growing and harvesting of trees, the designing of road systems, or maybe it's forest recreation, fish and wildlife programs. So it's basically a school that's got a lot of opportunities for folks that like to be out in the natural environment.
Wonderful. So let's unwind you a little bit if we could. Maybe we can give the kids a glimpse into how you came up from where you were to where you are today, because you're an executive today, but you weren't always an executive. You started out somehow. Can you give us how you started out in the world and kind of take us on a little path forward?
Sure. So I grew up in the eastern part of the Bay Area in a town of Walnut Creek, which is a suburb of the San Francisco Bay Area. Middle-class family. My dad was a general contractor, still is. And so I would go out to the job sites with my dad, and he'd be building a house or adding on the house. I was always fascinated by wood. I just loved wood and working with wood, and Dad would bring wood home. So my brothers and I would play with wood, build a tree fort and all those kind of things in the backyard. So I liked wood. And then, as a family, we'd go camping. So we'd go up to the Sierras in California, go up to the mountains, and we'd go camping and just loved being out in the woods. And so we're trying to figure out, what do I want to do when I graduate high school? I was kind of thinking, I don't know, right? What do I want to do? But I really like wood, and I really like camping and being out in the woods. Well, forestry sounds good. So I applied to a couple different forestry schools in the United States and got accepted and decided to go to Oregon State as the one I chose to go to. And so I got up there at Oregon State, went to school, and I honestly knew very little about forestry at all. I couldn't even tell you what a Douglas fir tree was, and that's the predominant timber species we deal with in the Northwest, and I couldn't identify one. I knew that little. I just knew I liked trees, and I knew I liked wood. So, I started with very little, right. And from a suburban environment, I just knew I wanted to do something out there, and just kind of learned. And I had some great mentors in summers when I was going to college. So they have programs there where they're hooking students up with mentors in the industry, kind of like an internship programs for the summer. And so a lot of students, they sometimes they rotate around with different companies or different organizations every summer. I end up having one that I really enjoyed right out of the gate and at the career fair, and I worked with them all every summer when I was going through school, and I was hired on full time after.
That's wonderful. Those mentors mean quite a bit to us when we're younger, don't they?
They do. I learned so much from them. Of course, I learned a lot in school. I learned a basis for a lot of what we do. The scientific background, the decisions and why we make decisions, but then I learned a lot of the practical came from the folks in the field that I learned from, and their experiences actually doing. So it's been great. That's
a great way to say it. Actually doing, right? That's inventing, making, and storytelling is the world in which we play in the world of innovation, but doing or making, I would consider those the same, but very, very important that you're actually doing things with your hands or your mind to make things happen. So
it's a little of both. There's the world of the theoretical and the world of the practical, and you got to figure out where that you can merge those two. So I learned a theoretical at school and learned a practical in the field.
Well said. Well said. Thank you for that. Thank you very much. So if you could do one thing over again in your high school or early college days, what would it be and why?
I kind of probably bloomed a little late. I didn't when I was in high school. I went through high school and just kind of got through high school and didn't have a focus at that point in time. And it probably wasn't until I was maybe a junior in college that I really started to settle in and figure that, I better really pay attention here. This stuff means something. So if I was to go back, I think I would go back with the knowledge that a lot of things matter that I didn't believe mattered at the time. People were telling me they mattered, but I didn't really believe them. The STEM programs, science, technology, engineering, math. All those things matter. I enjoyed them, but I didn't take it as seriously as I should have. So if I was to go back, I would take those subjects much more seriously.
Interesting. Yeah, that's some great mentoring advice for our audience today, and I would agree with you. That's having a more serious commitment to the STEM-based courseware. It really helps you understand a lot more in the world, and maybe you can find a niche that fills that part of you that you want to chase down. So, that's some good advice.
Yeah, I think if you really want to be successful in life, you find the thing you're passionate about and follow it.
Well said, Matt. I agree with you. All right, so shall we move on?
Yeah.
All right. So how would you suggest students get hands-on experience to build some of the skills that they would be able to use in their adult lives? Are there any classes you might recommend? You mentioned STEM, but is there any more detail that you could get into there?
Related to what, just in general?
In general, and helping you get through life, or maybe it might have helped you in your career. Any other hands-on or mentors helping you get some hands-on?
Yeah. I had a neighbor growing up next to me as a kid, and he was a research chemist for Dow Chemical. And his name was Cal. And Cal, one of the smartest men I ever met. And I was taking shop class, metal class, and I had this piece of metal, and I went over to Cal one day, and I said, "Hey, Cal, I want to know what kind of metal this is." And Cal said, "Well, I think it's this, but hold on, let me find something." And he came back to me the next day with about a 40-page book on how to determine which alloy that was. And I just want to know, is this brass or is this like copper, Cal? But Cal would mentor me and give me advice, and take things that I thought were pretty simple and show me it's actually a lot of things in life are a lot more complicated than you may think, and how to go about that process of, determining what something is. So I'd say find someone that you trust, that you have a relationship with, and it could be in something completely different than what it is you want to study, but they will help guide you. Cal was a chemist, I'm a forester, but Cal helped to guide me and teach me the scientific method and how to think for myself and question things. So I'd say find someone that you trust in your own realm. Talk to them. Ask them what they do, why they do it, and explain to them what are your goals in life. What would you like? What's your passion, and how can I get to where I want to be?
How fortunate you were to have a guy like Cal next to you. A Dow chemist and who understands raw material science and the scientific method. Those are some pretty important pieces of the puzzle in the world of innovation. And so if you can find somebody in your area that you can trust, that's a good pickup. And has some that is interesting. When I was a boy, I had a Westinghouse chemist who lived across the street from us, and he was a very unique person. He made me very curious because he was working on lasers back in the day, when lasers were only something you read about in a comic book,
Right.
And just odd things. Like one day a laser shows up on my bedroom wall, and I thought we were being invaded by Martians or something,
It's red light in the wall. What is that?
Right. But, it's the stuff that gets your curiosity going, and, again, another mentor, a science-oriented person. So
tinkering around with things, right? And we talk in our company all the time, our management team, we talk about don't be afraid to fail.
There you go.
I mean, I'm good at failing, right? And right. It's a process that we use to grow. And the things that come hard, you appreciate them. You appreciate them more, and we got to win more than we lose. So we got to at least be 51% winning. But don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to fail. And I think a lot of times, probably the things that hold us back the most are actually between our ears. They're not people or systems that are holding us back. It's our self. We're limiting ourselves a lot. So if you can kind of get past that and go, I can do whatever I want to do if I put my mind to it. I'll find people that'll work with me and want to help me do what I need to do. But I need to do this on my own, and we need to move forward.
So as a young person, if you can show the initiative and maybe find a mentor and eventually you'll start to build confidence. And when you start building some confidence, those other barriers come down a little, don't they? Because you're not afraid to trip and fall and get back up. And that is part of the learning process. So I think that's some wonderful advice you're giving to these young people today. So thank you.
No problem.
There are going to be plenty of thank yous because already I can tell this interview is really going really well. So
great.
So we're off to a good start.
Well, when you think about failing, I mean, how many times did Edison fail with building a light bulb, right? And he said he didn't really fail. He just found out all these different ways and how not to make a light bulb.
That's part of the process of figuring it out, isn't it?
It is. And so even what I do in our job, and we're pushing the technological boundaries with these machines, we're asking Ponsse for and how we manage and do different processes, we're going to push and we're going to find out where those limits are, and then we're going to figure out, okay, that's the limit today. How can I innovate? What do we need to do? What are some ideas how to change to get past that, whatever that particular hurdle may be? And sometimes it doesn't come right away.
Right.
Sometimes it takes a couple attempts at something and trying different things, and we learn and we grow and we keep track of those things that worked, maybe in a different situation. Would they be applicable here? So, thinking differently, thinking innovatively, it's something that comes kind of natural to us at our company, and I think for young people out there, young students, don't be afraid to have an idea that you think maybe isn't right.
Right.
Try it. You don't know. You
don't know, and I agree with you. There's a side story. We'll talk about that in just a moment, but I think they're very lucky over at Ponsse that they're working with an organization like yours. You are actually utilizing their equipment and identifying potential new needs that you have? And then do you funnel that back into the research and development department at Ponsse? So they're getting real field knowledge from people getting their hands dirty every day, doing the work, and they can then try to strive for the next level over there. Is that fair to say?
It is fair to say. We do lots of requests or asks from Ponsse, and we throw ideas at them like, what about this? What about that? They kick ideas back and forth with us, like there's a firefighting water tank that we've just been developing with them. It took 2 years and a back and forth, and now we've got the first one on site. And now that we have our hands on the first one, well, that's Generation 1. We've already thought of a bunch of changes for Generation 2.
So what caused that to happen? So usually there's a cause and then there's an effect, right? So there was an observational analysis. What was seen in the field that caused that to happen?
Based on the number of fires that we're having, and our company's heavily involved in wildland firefighting, we wanted to see, is there a better way, a safer way to get water out to the field to help reduce these wildfires, to suppress them earlier, with maybe a shorter time frame and safer, and with maybe a little less people, so we can free up resources to go help fight other parts of the fire. Because when a wildfire occurs, they're usually over a large area, and there's a tremendous resource drain, or a lot of folks are needed. So there's limited resources. So how can we stretch our resources out to be more effective with what we do and do it safer? So this idea of taking a forwarder, which we normally use for harvesting operations, and integrating a water supply and a water cannon on it, and packing 2,640 gallons of water out away from the road into the woods, saves time.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Good innovation, right?
It is. It's great. It's fun.
So just to touch back, before I forget, I want to make sure I touch back for the audience, but failing your way forward, I had a great mentor in one of my schools that I was in when I was a middle schooler. My science teacher, we had to do an experiment. We had to come up with an idea. And this partner of mine, we decided that we were going to try to make a tornado go upside down. And so, we reversed it. We had the hot on the top and the cold on the bottom, and then we built a box with the glass that we could slide the panels, and we thought we were going to be able to make this tornado go upside down. And we couldn't get it to work. And so we tried as hard as we could, but when I got my grade, it was an A. And that was the beginning of understanding. I had a great mentor as a science teacher in middle school, and what he taught us was, no, because you failed doesn't mean you failed. You tried, it didn't work out, but what a great experiment. And I realized, hey, we captured his curiosity too. He wanted to see if this would actually work. But failing your way forward, I just want to make sure we touch back on that just for a moment.
Sure.
But all right, so shall we move on?
Yeah.
Okay, so if I had to ask you for a maker tip for these students out there in the world today, what kind of things would you want me to know or want the kids to know if I was in your operation? What would be a maker tip?
A maker tip. Can you describe a maker tip?
As like a suggestion on if I wanted to learn how to make things and make a contribution at your organization, how could I become a good maker? I'm a young person. I'm in middle school or high school, and what things could I do at home that might ignite my mental competency? We host some school tours with kids, and we're going to actually do 2 of them next week down in California, where they bring the school kids out, and they're going to watch the machines work and move around different stations, and it's a fun time. And usually we get some drawings back from school kids about the machines and different innovations that they come up with, right? Doing things differently, and so they're very observant of what's going on out there, and they take a lot in. And I think as a maker, observing the process, and what's going on is the first step
and then kind of going, well, how can I improve upon that? What can we do to maybe make this better? How can we be more efficient about it? And then we get these drawings back. Something different. The machine looks different, right? Or there's, observing, trying to figure out what's the need, or is there a need, or is there a need that nobody even knows about yet?
Right.
And how can you change it and make it better?
So building your observational skills is actually, it could be one of the most basic building blocks for a maker to have. If you can't troubleshoot a problem, you can't figure out the solution, right?
Right.
So, all right. Well, that's good. That's a good one.
Observing.
Yes.
Yep.
Let's see here. All right. So let's talk about the future a little bit.
Yeah.
And the next, let's say, if we were to look out into the field 10 years, 30 years out, what would you think are some of the big innovations that are coming down the pathway here? Is it going to be all like traditional forestry, or are we going to see, AI and technology going into the forest?
We are, and we currently are, and we're going to see more of it. We're utilizing drones in forestry right now and taking photos, and some of the technologies are allowing us to identify where the trees are in the landscape, and the machines know where they are in the landscape now. When they harvest trees, they know where the base machine is relative on the landscape. But I think as time goes on, the machine is going to be able to help us make decisions better about, let's say, a thinning operation where we harvest some of the trees and leave some of the trees to grow. The machines are going to help the operators determine which ones to stay and go to meet a prescription, or what a forester designates as what they want the forest to look like after it's done. We're going to see some of that. There's going to be more innovation between the two machines communicating with each other. So the one that cuts into trees and lays the logs out will send information to the one that's going to go pick them up and get them to the roadside, so it knows where those logs are. There's innovation where the end users, let's say the sawmills or the plywood plants that are utilizing these trees and making products for society, they're going to get the information of what kinds of trees and what the lengths and diameters and volumes are of these trees that are going to be coming to them before they even see the trees show up at their operation. So they can help them plan and manage, do we have enough of a certain size and a certain length for a particular product, or should we switch, and should we make a different size or length of product because our customers are needing something different? So we're going to give them, they're going to have more visibility of the process and inventory management. We're going to basically extend the manufacturing facility out into the forest so they have this raw material information before they get it.
Wow, there's a lot of innovation going on.
There's a ton. And as a forester, as a manager, things that are happening already is I can pull up some information on my iPad and I can see where the machines are working and what they're producing and where they're on the landscape, and we're going to be communicating with our landowners that way as to where they are and planning for how soon until they're done with their project and ready to move on to the next one, or where we're at in the process. So for mechanics, let's say, the ability for mechanics to remotely log in on a computer, maybe even a state or two away, and reach into that machine and maybe make some changes to it to help the operators out. Or maybe the machine's going to start sending back information like a system is starting to fail. We see a hydraulic pump starting to fail. We can measure. There's things we can measure to tell when a system may fail and send preventative help out before something actually fails, so our operators can stay functioning and productive.
That's wonderful.
So connectivity. I think connectivity in the forest, you think you're out in the middle of nowhere, and a lot of places we work don't even have cell phone coverage.
Yes. But
there's going to be a connectivity connection with these machines with those of us that are maybe not with them that particular day. I mean, my office, I have a physical office, but my office is really my pickup truck, and using my iPad or a laptop, I'm connecting with a lot of things that way. So my most effective time is actually out in the field and working with other foresters and landowners and working with the folks out in the field. So having this connectivity, I can't be everywhere all the time. It helps me be more productive as well.
Understood. Wow. A lot of advancement. It seems like you're going to get more efficiencies out in the field, a better pattern upon how you're, let's say, harvesting, so that you can plan the future out a little better. Is that a fair way to say it?
It is, and we're going to see advances in terms of fuel efficiencies for equipment and maybe systems that are driving those machines, maybe hybrid-type systems, just like we're seeing with vehicles. It may not be all totally powered by an engine. There might be some electrical components in there, and so maybe some batteries in the machine as well, along with maybe a smaller engine that are going to help drive the machine. So we're going to be able to reduce our fuel consumption, become more efficient, because there are some inherent advantages of electrical drive systems over hydraulically driven systems.
Yes.
So I think we're going to see some innovations in that regard as well.
So we're going to see a Tesla machine out there?
Yeah, the Tesla harvester.
right. Oh, that's great. Well, lots of technology. We love hearing that, because that means all these young people have, a new world they're coming up in, and if they can build those STEM and STEAM skills, there may be a home for them in forestry. So if you like the outside world, but you also like tech, maybe those two will blend together here for you soon.
There are already jobs out there like that.
Really?
Where folks are blending tech and forestry. Yep, there are. Just ask the folks at Ponsse. I mean, there are 75, 85 people in R&D there, and that's what they're doing. They're taking tech to the woods.
Tech to the woods. I like the way that sounds. I like that. All right, so now you gave me a segue onto Ponsse. We hit a little bit about that organization. Yeah. Can we take for another moment and talk a little bit about, how, what company started here? But we can talk about Ponsse for a minute. I'd love to know about who was this that started this company, and is there a story here that might be worth sharing from an entrepreneurial perspective? Yeah,
there is. So entrepreneurship happens globally, right? There's entrepreneurs all over this world, and you never know where they're going to come from, but they're out there. And so our story for Ponsse begins in a little village called Vierma, Finland. Vierma, Finland is a little small rural farming community, forestry community, kind of in the middle of Finland. And there's a gentleman by the name of Henry Vigren. And Henry, after World War II, Henry was trying to make a living for his family in tough environment, tough times in Finland after World War II, and Finland's mostly forested. So Henry, of course, worked in the forest, as a lot of folks in rural Finland do. And harvesting trees and hauling trees out of the woods at that point in time was a difficult, tedious task. Mm-hmm. Finland's very cold in the winter, and so they was trying to harvest trees, and Henry got to thinking, and this innovative spirit of his, how can we do this better? Because before they're kind of using maybe a small farm tractor and things like that to get these logs to market, and sometimes they put them on a sled and pull them with a horse, and they're like, how can we do this differently? I'd kind of like to stay a little warmer than being out in the cold all winter long. So Henry helped develop him and he had some friends in a shop, a little shop in Vierma. He developed a forwarder, what we now know as a forwarder. And this forwarder was really innovative because you had a cab on it and a crane on top of the cab, and you could reach over and pick up these logs and put on its back and drive them to the roadside, which was much better than trying to drag them out with a tractor in the cold or maybe on a sled with a horse.
Right.
So in this little village of Vierma, there was a dog that kind of hung around Henry's shop, and it wasn't particularly a very good-looking dog. It was kind of a mutt, and but everybody in the village said, when you go on and go hunting, you take this dog with you, because this dog may not look very good, but this dog is a tremendous hunting dog. It really performs. And so when they're in the shop and they're building this machine, it wasn't really the most graceful-looking machine, but it was really good at what it did. So they decided to name the machine and actually the company after the dog, and the dog's name was Ponsse. So here we are 50 years later, and the little dog in the village that wasn't good looking but could really hunt is now the name of a very large multinational company.
That is a great story. I've never heard of a company being named after a ratty-looking dog.
Yeah, I think Henry must have had a pretty good sense of humor too.
It sure sounds like it. So he's an innovator with a sense of humor.
Yes,
that's a wonderful combination.
It is. It's good to be to laugh at yourself too, right? It's just.
All right. Well, that's a great story about Ponsse, and maybe we could wrap up with two more questions that would speak directly to our audience in reference to, young adults today when you're doing your hiring, and what are the skill sets that you're looking for at your organization? And if you have quite a few different types of jobs there, but from the most basic perspective, if I'm a young person and I was listening to your advice today, what skill sets would you recommend to me?
So there are hard skill sets and soft skill sets. Mm-hmm. And the soft skill sets are almost more important than the hard skill sets. And the soft skills being just, showing up on time, doing what's asked of you, being a team player, being willing to do things outside of your normal work routine because they need to be done, even if you're like, well, that's really not my job. Those are all important things. And as an innovator, there's obviously things that come up for us that, when we hire somebody, we don't plan this is what you're going to do, but the path leads us here. Mm-hmm. And so we just need to do what needs to be done to make it happen. So for young folks to have a willingness to, be involved, be a team member, be a part of a team, be willing to think things differently, be willing to approach new ideas and not, go, well, I don't think that's going to work, but just let them play out, see what happens.
Yeah, I think those soft skills you're mentioning, do you believe that would apply across all different types of organizations out there?
Yes, just other folks in our industry or other industries that we interact with and talk with. There is absolutely a need for these soft skills from a lot of folks.
It's like a basic building block, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, if you don't show up to work on time, if you don't want to be a team player or interact positively with your coworkers, it's tough to advance without it.
How about the hard skills?
So the hard skills, depending on what the job is we're doing, we have different hard skills, and those are educational, like scientific training. So for myself, I have a forestry degree and a business minor, and so those hard skills I learned there, I apply into practicing forestry. We're kind of like, foresters are like doctors, right? We're always called practicing forestry, like doctors call it practicing being a doctor, right? Or practicing medicine. Right. We never really get it perfect. Mm-hmm. So you have to be willing to understand and know that you never really get it right perfectly all the time because there's so many variables. But we're always practicing. We're always trying to get better. Mm-hmm. So with this culture of constant and continuous improvement process is very much alive in our organization. And one of the things we do when you talk about the hard skills is we sat down as a management team and it was maybe a little difficult at first to do this, but now it's totally normal for us. We sat down and we made on a whiteboard, we made a list of what each one of us on that management team, what our strengths were, and then our weaknesses.
Wonderful.
And what we looked at there was we said, okay, all right, Matt, well, you've got some strengths over here and you got some weaknesses there. And we spoke about our own, and then our coworkers kind of chimed in on what they thought.
Oh, pardon me, 1 moment. Yeah. You mean adults have weaknesses?
Yeah. Yes, we do, and actually they're probably quite a bit more than you think.
I'm just saying it's important these young people don't, they look at adults as though they can't do anything, really in the wrong category sometimes. But we do make mistakes, don't we?
We do, and it's okay if we own up to them.
Yes.
I think ownership of when something doesn't go right or you don't do something right or you let somebody down, I think owning that and owning it being like admitting that, I'm sorry I let you down there. Mm-hmm. It's my fault. I won't do that again is really important because I think it's important for personal growth to move forward and to gain respect and trust with your coworkers is to own it. You have to own you have to own things. And that means there's good things you own and sometimes there's things you own that aren't so good.
Right.
But then and what you do is you move forward, right?
Exactly.
Own it, we move forward. But we went through this process of identifying our strengths and weaknesses as a management team, and you have to open yourself up, be a little vulnerable to that, right? Because I had one individual in our management team. He listed all the positive things, but didn't have a lot of there that, oh, this is perfect, right? It was all perfect. We all have skills that are given to us, and there's things we don't have. So what we've decided to do is we knew as a group what we needed to be successful. And so we figured out who has what skill sets and put them where, and where were we deficient as a group, as a management team? What skills did we need? Where were we lacking? And we went out and found individuals that had those skills. So we weren't trying to say, okay, Matt, well, you're not strong in this, but you are in this, so I want to try to make you stronger in something you're not really strong at, or it doesn't come naturally to you. We're going to let you naturally do where your strength is, and then it doesn't feel like work.
Right.
And then another coworker over here is really naturally strong at that, and it's no big deal. So I've got a coworker, he loves building spreadsheets, right? He loves doing that kind of stuff. And so you mention something like that, and he's, oh, yeah, no problem, right? So we got when a coworker says something is no problem, and then somebody else goes, well, I really don't like doing that, give that job to somebody that says no problem, because they really have a lot of energy for it and passion for it, and it's easy for them. So let's the other coworker focus on the things that they say is no problem.
Yeah, we like to say that if you can find what you like and love, it's not work anymore.
It's not.
So it sounds like you're figuring out ways at your operation on how to get people to find their likes and inspire them to go do it.
Follow your passions. I mean, if you follow your passions, they say you'll never work a day in your life, and I'd say I'm kind of living proof of that. I love what I do. I can't believe I get paid to do what I do, but it's fun. I'm probably much more successful because I get to follow my passion and what I enjoy doing versus maybe doing something that, I could do it, but I just didn't really enjoy it as much.
Yes.
So as a young person, I'd say follow your passion. Your chances for success are going to be much higher, and personal satisfaction in life are going to be a lot higher.
Right. So let's help you find that passion. Right?
Find that passion.
All right. So our last question. If you could share with our education leaders how they may be able to better prepare our students for the jobs of the future, what would you mention to them, to those leaders?
So young folks that we've seen, we've interviewed, and we get young folks working on the fire crews, and we hire young folks to start operating these machines, and they can work up in the company. One of the things that we have seen, and maybe educators can help us with, is those soft skills we were talking about earlier. Those things need to be emphasized back in school. The importance to an employer for all those soft skills. Something as simple as, showing up on time, being part of a team, being willing to innovate, thinking about, well, not just go, well, that's my job. Right. I need, because everybody's got to wear different hats. Preparing folks for the fact that the work environment is a dynamic environment where things are constantly changing, and you need to be flexible and work around that. And things aren't always quite as defined as one would maybe want to hope, because life doesn't really work that way.
Right.
An educator to work with young folks and tell them that, showing up to school on time, doing what you're asked to do, and you have deadlines to meet. Those things all really matter in the real world. When we have targets to meet, clients we have to take care of. Let's say we get to the wildfire side of the company. Their time is of the essence, right? So we have to make sure we show up on time. And there's definite chains of command to keep everybody safe. And we have to work on communicating well to keep everybody safe and to get our job done. All those skills that can be taught in school and reinforced in school are very important when we get in the real world. It doesn't matter what career path you're on. Every company, every team member needs to have those skills in order to be successful. So an emphasis of those.
Well said, Matt. Well, I can't thank you enough for sharing all your insight and the wisdom you've given to our students today. And I'm sure they'll pack some of this in and try to unwrap it and maybe help them with their future careers.
Well, I wish all these students the best of luck in life, and find your passion, go follow it down, and the only thing really holding you back is between your ears. So free your mind, go out and do what you need to do. Make it happen.
There we go.
For more information about the innovations and ideas changing tomorrow's world, Tune into Tomorrow's World Today, now streaming on Science and Discovery, or visit tomorrowsworldtoday.com.